A CBS News poll out this morning shows President Trump's job approval rating is at historic lows. This comes as Mr. Trump closes in on his first 100 days. 41% of people approve of the president's job performance. 53% disapprove. The poll also gives clues as to why his approval rating is so low. CBS News elections director Anthony Salvanto is here. Anthony, good morning.
Good morning.
Smartest political guy I know. He knows the numbers. Let's talk about this, because President Obama at this same milestone was at 68% approval. George W. Bush was at 56% approval. Why the low numbers for President Trump?
It's partisanship. We have not seen, and we've been doing these polls for 40 years now on presidents, partisan splits as big as the one that we see now, by which I mean President Obama and then President Bush before him would typically get about a third of people from the opposing party approving of their job performance. But Donald Trump has 10% of Democrats approving of him. And so you have to know that context, and that's why, it's a big part of why his numbers are so low. Republicans love him, and everybody else is keeping their distance.
But don't polls also show that he would still get more popular vote than Hillary Clinton? And she would be factored in that if the election was run again.
Yeah, his supporters are still entirely with him. In our polling and other polling, you see that across the board. In fact, many of them have told us, this is what I voted for. They think he's changing Washington. They like the approach. So in all of that, his base and his supporters are still rock solid, and they're not disappointed in the least, even if he hasn't made as much progress as they would have liked so far, if they say, well, it's a process.
Anthony, to that end, these numbers tend to shift over the course of a presidency. And yet, are we seeing something different with this president? Do we expect him to be pulling Democrats to his side of the aisle in terms of support, or vice versa? Do we expect a departure of his supporters?
Well, most Americans say it's too soon to judge at 100 days, which is another clue that sometimes Washington doesn't think the same way Americans think, right? Yeah. But the folks who say, well, we've already seen enough, are the Democrats. And they still say that they feel emotionally, that they feel scared or concerned, the same way they did at the start of the term. So to that extent, they don't feel like he's reached out. They don't feel like he's giving them anything to latch onto.
But tax reform and infrastructure will give them an opportunity to reach out to Democrats.
It very well might. And look, 100 days doesn't predict the future. We have seen in this polling and our polling, presidents go up and down over the course of their terms in big swings. So 100 days may be historically low now, but we would expect movement.
By the 100-day mark, President Bush had his tax cuts passed by the House. Clinton had the Family and Medical Leave Act. Obama had signed the stimulus and equal pay acts. If, to Charlie's point, if President Trump gets a legislative victory, do we see the numbers usually bump up a bit?
Yeah, we might. I mean, look, even people who say that they support him and want everything he's doing say that he should work with Congress, say that he should cut deals. Remember, the sort of big picture, one of the reasons that they backed him wasn't just to change Washington, but they saw him as a deal maker. But they also know that that process takes time, that it doesn't necessarily just take 100 days, and that's what they tell us. So he's got to, if he makes those deals, then yes, that's delivering on a big theme promise.
Anthony, always great to have you here.
Thanks, Charlie.